Like to call the meeting to order. First order of business is roll call. Mr. Curtin?
All right, let's start. Tom Silvera. Here. Tom Heaney.
Here.
Jim Miller.
Here.
Eric Curtis here. Chris Souza.
Here.
Olin Gambrell.
Here.
And Andy Bates.
Here.
Okay, second order of business is adoption of the minutes.
Oh, sorry. Dave Pinto. I
Here.
started with-
Sorry, Dave. Second order of business is adoption of the minutes from the February 25th meeting. You have a copy in your packet. Can I have a motion to accept?
Motion to accept the minutes from the 25th of February.
I second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Before we go into the next, tonight's our first meeting using technology. So if during the proceedings it's getting difficult, we might have to hit pause. So bear with the people here and bear with the people at home. Our goal is to make sure that everyone's voice is heard. But if it looks like something's going to be more complicated than we can handle here, then I might ask the applicants to postpone it till after, hopefully July 10th when we open up. So with that in mind, our next order of business is election of officers. Our annual term is up for the officers, so tonight we need to elect. There were some changes made last night, courtesy of the council. Mr. Silvera was elevated from an alternate to a regular member, and Mr. Gambrell was taken from the regular sitting member to an alternate. With that in mind, we need to elect our officers. So who would like to be president?
I nominate Jim Miller.
I'll second.
Okay. Who would like to be the vice chair? Am I allowed to nominate?
Yes, you are.
I'd like to nominate Tom Silvera as vice chair.
I second.
We need a nomination for secretary.
I'll nominate Tom Heaney.
I'll second. We have a slate. Can I have a vote to accept the slate as presented? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 5-0. Welcome aboard, Mr. Heaney.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard, Mr. Silvera. Thank you. It's a job I think you know pretty well. Okay. Our first case tonight is we're going to convene as the Planning Board of Appeals. Mr. Curtin, do we need to read the whole thing into the, Mr. Regan, do we need to,
You're going to convene as planning board of appeals?
yes. Do we need to read the case
And
in?
then you're going
I would
to-
read the case in.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to convene right now as the Planning Board of Appeals. Mr. Curtin, can you read the case in?
I should.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tom Heaney. Sorry, Mr. Curtin.
The appeal of Eugene Goldstein, owner, by his attorney David P. Martland Esquire, from the decision of the planning board dated October 18th, 2019, and recorded on October 22nd, 2019, which denied the pending application for combined preliminary and final plan approval for a proposed 8-lot subdivision of property fronting on Prospect Ave. Said real estate is located approximately 0.3 miles to the east of the intersection of Prospect and Aquidneck Ave, and further identified as Lot 66A on Tax Assessor's Plat 121 Northwest.
Mr. Chairman, I did speak this afternoon with Mr. Martland, who represents the applicant and the appellant on that appeal. I'd also previously spoken with Russell Jackson, who represents several of the abutters, and we discussed a schedule for the appeal, and the agreement, subject to the board's approval, was that Mr. Jackson and I would submit our briefs on behalf of the abutters and myself on behalf of the planning board by July 31st, and that Mr. Martland would have 2 weeks until August 14th to file any reply to those briefs, with the matter being set down for a hearing on August 25th. So that's what we would like to present to the board for consideration in terms of a briefing schedule, if that's agreeable.
And that's just administrative. We don't need a vote for that. We can just approve, just,
I think you would just approve it.
right. I have no problem with the schedule. My only concern is that we receive all the briefs in enough time that everyone can read them. So I'd like to reinforce to Mr. Martland that we get his brief at least 10 days prior to the hearing so that everyone has a chance to be able to read it and get questions.
So the agreement is, Mr.
Fine.
Jackson and I will have our briefs in by July 31st, and any reply, he's not required to file a reply. He's already filed his initial brief. Mr. Martland would have any reply in by the 14th of August.
That's perfect.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I'm wondering if there's any reason, or make any sense to have a site visit. This has been going on. Wondering if it makes sense to have a site visit. This has been going on for several years. I think it deserves. full
Since this
attention.
is an appeal and the appeal is limited to the record that was before the planning board, I don't know that a site visit is appropriate. As I explained to Mr. Miller earlier, Marissa Desautel, since I'm filing a brief on behalf of the planning board, will be advising the zoning board on this. So I can certainly reach out to her and then she or I can get back to you. But on appeal, the appeal is limited to what was in front of the planning board and the planning board record. So that may not be an appropriate step in this case.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Regan. So I'm going to go ahead and approve the schedule as presented, and we'll put this off until the August meeting, which is what date?
That would be August 25th.
And we'll either have a hearing or we'll have a meeting to discuss when we're going to have a hearing. Okay, with that, I'm going to close the Planning Board of Appeals, and we'll go on to the regular business with the zoning. Mr. Kane, in the interest of everyone at home, rather than going through and reading the cases, can we just go through the calendar in order?
For the continuances and withdrawals?
Yes.
As long as the petitioner's name and address should be at least cited. You don't need to read the whole petition in.
Thank you. So we're going to start next with the cases to be continued or withdrawn. Mr. Heaney, if you can read the first case.
Petition of Shore Drive Limited Liability Company owners for a variance from section 601, 603, 701, 703 alpha, and 704. And said real estate is located at 0 Shore Drive and further identified as Lot 108 on Tax Assessor's Plat 116 Southeast.
Mr. Chairman, I believe there's a letter in the file from the owner of the property requesting that the petition be allowed to be withdrawn without prejudice.
Okay. So we will accept that letter. And we're going to withdraw it this evening. Withdrawn. Next case, Mr. Heaney.
Petition of James L. Paradise owner by his attorney Gerard A. Galvin Esquire for a variance from sections 903, 1504, and 603. Said real estate is located at 170 Aquinic Avenue and further identified as lots 145, 146, and 147 on Tax Assessor's Plat 115 Southeast.
Mr. Heaney, read the next petition as well, so we'll get them both done.
Petition of James L. Paradise owner by his attorney Gerard A. Galvin Esquire for a special use permit and a development plan review from sections 306 Bravo, 602, 902, and 1500. And the property, said real estate is located at 170 Aquidneck Avenue and further identified as lots 145, 146, and 147 on Tax Assessor's Plat 115 Southeast.
Mr. Chairman, those two petitions are presented together, special use permit and a variance. I believe there is a letter in your file asking for continuance to a future date. That still has not been taken up by the planning board for development plan review. So if you would check the record just to see what date, I'm sorry, I don't have that. There's a letter from the petitioner's attorney.
They're asking for a letter to the July planning board meeting, which, would that give it enough time to appear before us?
It's possible, so the continuance would be to July 28th then for zoning.
Okay, so we'll continue both matters to July 28th. Is the planning board meeting this month?
I believe
The
so.
planning board met earlier this month, and
Yes.
they'll be meeting again in July.
Okay, thank you. So that's continued to 7/28/2020. Next to Mr. Keeney.
Petition of John R. Gullickson and Bonnie F. Zimble, owners, by their attorney Jeremiah C. Lynch III, for a variance from sections 603, 1301B, 1301D, 1304, 1404, and 1406. Said real estate is located at 59 Aquidneck Avenue and further identified as Lot 169 on Tax Assessor's Plat 115 Southeast. Petition of John R. Gullickson and Bonnie F. Zimble, owners, by their attorney Jeremiah C. Lynch III, for a special use permit from sections 602 and 1400. Said real estate is located at 59 Aquidneck Avenue and further identified as Lot 169 on Tax Assessor's Plat 115 Southeast.
Mr. Chairman, once again, two petitions presented before the board. They are in the development plan review process, and I'm not sure, but I believe that the applicant has requested a continuance. There's a letter in your file.
Yeah, to September.
To September, that is correct.
And what's the date in September, Mr. Keeney?
September 22nd.
So we're going to continue both petitions to September 22nd, 2020. You can go ahead, Mr. Keeney.
Petition of Atlantic Beach Suites Limited Liability Company, by their owner David P. Martland Esquire, for a special use permit from section 602, articles 11 and 14. Said real estate is located at 42 through 44 and 56 Wave Avenue and further identified as lots 4, 5, and 6 on Tax Assessor's Plat 116 Northwest.
Is Mr. Martland there?
Yes, hi, Mr. Chairman. I'd respectfully request that this matter be continued to the August meeting.
Okay, that is, I had it here,
25th.
August 25th. So we're going to continue that minute to August 25th, 2020.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Go ahead, Mr. Heaney.
Petition of Newport National Real Estate Limited Liability Company, by their attorney Robert M. Silva Esquire, for a variance from section 603 and 605. Said real estate is located at 425 Mitchell's Lane and further identified as Lot 29 on Tax Assessor's Plat 124.
Is anyone there?
No, I had expected that the attorney for this petition was going to be at part of the meeting. He did request that this matter be put over to the July hearing, which would be July 28th.
Yep, I'm going to continue to July 28th, and just note that that file was not here, so I'm going to continue it to 7/28/2020, and just, Celeste, if you can look for that file, it's not up here. Oh, I stand corrected.
You're still perfect.
I was wrong.
I was going to say I have it. Hope you do.
Okay. Last one.
Petition of Stephen Faria and Barbara Walton Faria, owners by their attorney, Robert M. Silva Esquire, for a special use permit from section 803. Said real estate is located at 495 Aquidneck Avenue and 39 Newman Road on tax assessor's plat 114 lots 216, 217, and 205 alpha.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, as well, that petitioner has requested a continuance to the July meeting, July 28th.
We're going to continue that one as well. So that's the continuances and withdrawals. We'll head to the full hearings.
Yeah,
Mr. Heaton?
Mr. Chairman, I believe that there's one item at the end of the agenda that Mr. Martland was contemplating earlier today to continue it. Would be the petition of EM Middletown Development. That's the last one on your agenda.
Okay, would he, Mr. Martland? David? Would you like?
Yes, I was just getting unmuted there. Good evening, Mr. Chairman. I'd request that that matter be continued to the July hearing date.
Okay,
Let me read it in, Mr. President.
we're going to read that in then. Go ahead, Mr. Heaney.
Petition of EM Middletown Development Limited Liability Company owner for a special use permit from sections 1212 to allow for the installation of two freestanding signs. Said real estate is located at 533 East Main Road on tax assessor's plat 113, lot 190.
And that petition is being continued at request of council to 7/28/20.
Thank you.
Now we're ready to go to our first full hearing. Mr. Heaney?
Petition of SKN Associates owners by their attorney, Robert M. Silva Esquire, for an extension pursuant to section 905 for release granted from Article 6, sections 603, 701, 803G, 1103, and 1106 for a one-year extension to June 26, 2021 of a previously granted release, originally granted by decision dated June 26, 2019. Said real estate is located at 15 Valley Road and further identified as Lot 25 on tax assessor's plat 107 Northeast.
Mr. Silva, are you there? Mr. Martland, are you still there? I think he's left the house. Mr. Silva, if you can hear me?
If he's on the phone, he can hit *9.
Mr. Silva, if you hit *9, it will unmute you.
Chairman, I would suggest you hold that matter maybe till later in the agenda. See if we-
Mr. Regan, as a matter of protocol, since this is just a continuation of an existing. Mr. Silva,
Can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, finally
Welcome.
got through. I've been muted. I'm here, and I'm, for the record, Robert M. Silva. I represent the applicant SKN Associates. And we appeared before this honorable zoning board a while back, a year or so, June 26th of 2019. And we're asking for an extension of the relief that was granted. A number of matters have made it virtually impossible for the financing to come through, and the pandemic made it even worse. So we're prepared to go ahead with the conditions of the original decision, but we're asking for a 1-year extension during which we would be able to then begin the project.
Okay, Mr. Silva, let me let me see if anyone would like to speak either for or against the petition. I think it's a pretty straightforward request. Let me see if
Yeah,
anyone,
it's the Napa building on Valley Road. It's going to be upgraded completely with new designs, and it's an extension of the building only for purposes of storing product.
yes, sir.
Product. You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Silva. Is there
welcome.
anyone online that would like to speak either for or against the petition?
If you do want to speak, raise your hand. If you're on the phone, please hit *9.
Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing.
Wait a minute.
Celeste, do you see anyone? No. Okay. So we're going to close the public hearing. Can I have a motion to accept the petition as presented?
I'll make a motion to accept it as presented.
Second.
Motion made and second. Discussion?
To me, it seems like a reasonable extension, considering the pandemic, et cetera, what the difficulties that we've all had. I think a 1-year extension is reasonable.
Any other discussion? Seeing,
For it, because I think it's definitely a good piece. So there's a good reason.
I agree. I remember the petition when it was presented, and I think it's going to be a great improvement and also help our business community. So I too am going to support it. All those in favor?
Mr. Chairman?
Oh,
Just in keeping with the executive order allowing us to use this technology for the meetings, the vote should be by roll call. And the other thing, just as a suggestion, if the members, when you're making your comments or discussion, if you just say who you are, just so the folks at home know who's talking, it's just a little helpful for everyone to follow along.
sounds good. Mr. Heaney, can you call a roll call for vote?
Mr. Silva,
Yes, approved.
Mr. Souza,
Yes, I seconded the original motion.
Ms. Curtin,
Aye.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Mr. Heaney, aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Next petition. He just is going to thank us. We're good.
You ready to proceed, Jim?
Can we proceed, Celeste? Yes. Read the next petition, please.
Petition of Michael Russo, owner, for a variance from sections 705F to allow a fence on the easterly property line of 8 feet in height where 6 feet is allowed. Said real estate is located at 289 Prospect Avenue and further identified as Lot 47 on Tax Assessor's Plat 120.
Is the petitioner there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
He can.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Tell us about your petition, Mr. Russo.
Yes, so I already have a fence along that the eastern line of my property. Within the past year, the property adjacent has become a fully occupied transient trailer park. So it's a commercial enterprise, and there's a lot of noise and activity. So I really need the additional 2 feet for additional protection of my property. It's both audio noise and activity. It's also visually disruptive. So it shouldn't have any adverse impact on the adjacent neighbor. And me and my family need the additional 2 feet for our peace and solitude.
Okay. In the file, is this currently, here we go. So is this currently a picture of your current fence?
I don't believe so. I think it's been built since. That was just a picture, but it looks like that. That was what it was modeled after.
Okay, so you have a fence now at 6 feet and you want to go to 8 feet.
Correct.
How will you do that with the existing fence?
I've laid it out with D&D Fence Company. We have the material they're going to do kind of a nice little top 2 feet. There'll be a little border along the top, and then just the same wood extension.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant?
So we said this abuts the commercial trailer park, is that what you said?
Correct.
Speak into them.
You're saying that this abuts a commercial trailer park, is that correct?
Yeah, it's a commercial, it's a transient trailer park next door.
Okay,
It's the old Prospect.
yeah, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure that I wanted to put that I was understood that right, that's all.
Any other questions for the applicant from the board? Okay, is there anyone that would speak either for or against the petition on the phone?
Hello, this is
Hello.
Andrew Tights. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Strange. I'm looking at the zoning emblem there. But anyway, this is attorney Andrew Tights. T as in Thomas, EITZ. I'm an attorney with offices at 2 William Street in Providence, Rhode Island. And I'm representing the next door neighbor, which is Karmic LLC. Michael Pimentel. This is the transient trailer park next door. This is a legal non-conforming use with both the mobile home park and campground sites as well. And we certainly sympathize with Mr. Russo's concerns. And we actually don't have a problem with the fence going higher. Our problem is that the fence is in the wrong place. Now, I know you're a zoning board, you're not the Superior Court, so property disputes are not your issue. But I do feel it wouldn't be fair to Mr. Russo to not object, to put on the record that we believe he has put the fence along a right-of-way. There is a 20-foot right-of-way, which is even noted on the plans. And he's put that fence on the right-of-way, blocking access to our property. We've sent him a letter. We said we are working on plans to come in with a renovation to turn this into a cottage style development. And we think it will improve his property in the neighborhood. And so we actually provided permission to him to leave the existing fence there till November, because we don't want to fight over something that doesn't need to be fought over. But we would hate to see him spend more money and add 2 feet to a fence that we believe is going to have to be moved 20 feet further to the west, to the other side of the right of way.
Mr. Tights, I sympathize and I understand your argument. However, we have to rule here based on on the, as you said, the zoning code. So what happens in Superior Court happens in Superior Court. And I can't say either way whether the fence is on the right of way.
Sure. So let me, if I may, just address for your standards, I think the key issue here is hardship. This is a dimensional variance. The standard's fairly light of more than a mere inconvenience. But you also have to look at self-created hardships. This commercial use has been there for decades. I'm not sure if it predates that house or not, but it certainly, the commercial use has been there many decades. I believe it predates Mr. Russo's occupancy in the house. And although the vibrancy of the commercial use has waned and waxed over the years with the physical health and age of its owners, the commercial use is there. And this applicant has known of it. And so I would argue that it is not more than a mere inconvenience when the existing commercial use is what they're seeking some sort of protection from.
Noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else on the phone that would like to speak either for or against the petition? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Is that, nobody raised their hands, correct?
I have a question for Mr., is it Teets? You started off your presentation by saying that you didn't have a problem with the 2-foot addition.
Yes.
But you ended it, it sounded like you do.
Well, as the chair pointed out, you have a specific, you're not really looking at property issues. You have to look at the zoning issues. So I guess I've given you the background for why, but overall, I guess we do have a problem with it where it is in the 2-foot addition. We think it would be a bad precedent to set it when there's a lot of places in the town where you've got, it's a small town, it's a small state, you've got crowded stuff, you've got residential and commercial next door to each other. And so I think it would be kind of a bad precedent. So I just wanted to provide you with something. If you should choose to appreciate the appeal of my argument, there's a legal reason for it as well.
Okay, thank you. For the board, we closed the public hearing, so I can't reopen it unless I open it to everyone. So we have to, in the future, before I close the public hearing, we have to ask our applicant questions. Do I have a motion to accept the petition?
I make a motion to approve the 2-foot extension on the fence.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Discussion?
I think the applicant made a good argument that he has his family there, and it's become a transient facility, and he wants to add the couple feet to his fence to further shield his property from that location. I did note my colleague Eric asked the attorney, who did begin by saying he sympathizes with wanting to add the 2 feet. So I think he may have retracted that. I'm still not quite sure of that, but I sympathize with the man that wants to add the 2 feet to his fence.
I also agree. I think Mr. Russo in his statement made a good case for adding the 2 feet. And then, of course, the issue was brought up that the fence itself may at some point have to be moved, but that's not what we're deciding on. We're deciding on whether or not he can have kind of the full use and enjoyment of his property by adding 2 feet to the fence. And I think that's legitimate on his part to request that, and I'm going to support that.
I'm also going to support it. I believe that the petitioner did present a good case, and this is a special circumstance. Since it's being used more, I think he has a good case.
Thank you. I concur with my colleagues, and I too am going to support it. Whether or not it goes to Superior Court and has to get moved in the future, that's really not our call. So I think the applicant has to have the fence for the full use of his property. So with that, I'm going to call a vote. All those in favor?
We're going to do a roll call. So,
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Mr. Souza,
Aye, yes.
Mr. Curtin,
Aye.
Mr. Miller,
Yes,
Mr. Solera,
Yes.
Mr. Heaney, yes.
motion passes 5-0. Mr. Heaney?
Petition of Jeffrey Moniz, owner, for a variance from section 1600 and 603 to allow the addition of an accessory family dwelling with a front setback of 16 feet 4 inches where 40 feet is required. Said real estate is located at 67 Third Beach Road and further identified as Lot 4 on Tax Assessor's Plat 125.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to recuse myself from this.
Okay.
petition.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, I have to recuse myself from this.
Okay, so our first alternate is Mr. Huntoon. Mr. Huntoon, you, oh, I'm confused now. Mr. Gambrell, you'll be voting on this one. Mr. Bacon, you'll be voting on this one. Sorry, Dave.
And Mr. Curtin, are you going to act as
You're going to have to
secretary?
act
in
as
this?
secretary, Mr. Kurt. Back to secretary. You can't leave it. And you need to fill out the forms, right? for recuse. Thank you, Mr. Silver. Is there anyone on the phone that would like to speak for the petition?
Yes, this is Jeffrey Moniz here with my wife, Melissa.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Moniz. Tell us about your petition.
Yes, so we recently purchased this house. This house has been in our family for about 100 years at this point. We are looking for a front yard setback variance to accommodate an accessory family dwelling unit for my brother who is struggling with cystic fibrosis. He had an incident where he basically can't live alone anymore. He's been living with my parents for the last few years. He obviously doesn't want to, spend the rest of his life living with his parents. So this is going to allow him to live, as normal of a life as possible. The hardships that we currently have on the property, essentially the whole existing house is in the setback. I mean, we have over an acre of land, but the house is built, right in the front right corner. Directly behind the house is our well, as well as our septic, which prevents us from building kind of directly behind the house. There's also kind of an old garage that is falling apart a bit that's along the property line to the north. So we would like to obviously protect our ability to, rebuild this garage in the future in a more conforming way and keep the driveway in its existing place. In comparison to the neighborhood, I mean, we have the smallest house, out of the cluster of houses on the neighborhood. Even after we're done with this addition, we'll still be about 600 square feet under the average living space that's enjoyed by our neighbors. The setback that we're asking for is kind of well in the average of the neighborhood. As we look around, there's setbacks of 17 feet, 18 feet.
Slow down.
Yep. As we look around, there's setbacks of 17 feet, 8 feet, 18 feet, 21 feet, 9 feet. So we feel the relief that we're asking for is kind of right in line with what exists on the street right now. There was also kind of a precedent set by this. My neighbors directly to the north of me, I believe they got a very similar variance when they built an addition on their house kind of towards the south. I think their house was in kind of the same situation that ours is in now, and they built a 2-story addition kind of towards the south into the front yard setback. And we're asking for a 1-story addition along the front of the house, as we really have no other way to expand the existing property.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Okay, seeing none, let's open.
Could I ask Mr. Kane a question? Sure. Before I decide, I don't have any questions for the applicant. The accessory family unit addition usually is part of the house, and then you are not allowed to have that use when it's no longer being used, so
It has to be registered with the clerk's office, an affidavit stating the occupancy, who's going to be living in it. In this instance, it's allowed by right, not by special use permit. because the occupant has a disability that doesn't allow him to live alone. In the event that the situation changes and he's not living there anymore, then they're required to convert it back to a single-family home unless another relative that meets the requirements, parent, grandparent, child, or grandchild of the owner, could then occupy it. So, but it is registered with the clerk's office, and it does not become a two-family dwelling. If that clarifies it enough.
Yeah, that was great.
Okay.
And I assume the applicant's aware of all of that.
Yeah, they are. Well, when the application was submitted a couple months ago, they were made aware of that.
Any other questions for the applicant or Mr. Kane? So, Mr. Moniz, you are aware that it reverts back should something change?
Yes, we are aware.
Okay, very good. Seeing how there's no other questions from the board, I'm going to open it up and see if anyone in the audience would like to either speak for or against the petition. Nobody has raised their hand, so we're going to close the public hearing. Can I have a motion to accept the petition?
Motion to accept the petition.
I'll second.
Motion made and second, discussion?
Well, he's doing two things. He's doing a real nice thing for his brother. And he also did the research in the neighborhood that established that there's a lot of other homes within that part of town that have setbacks in that range. So I see no issue with the request.
Yeah, when I reviewed the plan, the unique characteristics of the lot really make it apparent where that use has to go. He has two wells that exist directly behind the house, which prevent it from going back. And if he went to the other side, he'd still be asking for relief. So I think it's a reasonable request. I applaud them for taking care of their brother, so I'm going to support the petition. Any other discussion? Can we have a roll call, Mr. Haney? Oh, you can't. Mr. Curtin, we need a roll call.
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Olin,
Yes.
who else? Andy,
Yes.
Eric, yes, Jim?
Yes. Motion carries 5-0. Good luck, Mr. Moniz, and thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Okay, petition of Jeffrey and Catherine Hall, owners, for a variance from section 603, 701, and 803G to allow the construction of a 29-foot by 13-foot 8-inch covered front porch with a front yard setback of 1 foot 9 inches where 25 feet is required. Said real estate is located at 175 Ellery Avenue and further identified as Lot 102 on Tax Assessor's Plat 115 Southeast.
Mr. Chairman, just, could you guys all speak into your microphones a little better? I was just contacted. It's difficult to hear you guys. on the
Okay.
audio. Okay, not so much in the room, but on the recording.
Very well. Mr. Hall, are you there? Mrs. Hall?
Yes, I am here, Jeff Hall.
State, I haven't been swearing anyone in tonight. We're going to have to repeat everything. Mr. Hall, can you tell us a little bit about your petition?
Sure, yes, and thank you for letting me, even if it's virtual, come on tonight and talk about this. I purchased this house from my godparents. Well, my godparents passed away two years ago. I purchased this house. I was a lifelong Middletowner, but have not been on the island for 20 years, so it was an opportunity to get back on the island. It's a sort of unique characteristic of this property. It's sort of a wedge, and it's just over 1,000 square foot house, but a third of it is garage. So we'd like to add a porch so we could expand some of the, not necessarily living area, but enjoyment area, I'd like to say. There's only one door off the back of the house in the garage, so a deck or patio back there is difficult. It's also adjacent, right next to our backyard neighbor. So given the front large section of land that's the retention pond, we felt that that was the sort of gave our neighbors privacy as well as ourselves a little bit more privacy. It doesn't affect the corner lot at all since we're set far back from the road. I've never done this before, so I do not know what else to say.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure if everyone's had a chance to look at the map, but the property in question faces out onto a large retention pond that was built as part of the stormwater. So it's a rain garden that's there. So the actual distance from their house to the road is substantial. It's not, I think it's a unique characteristic of the existing lot. I can hold it up for anyone to see. We should have. Yeah, I'm doing it for the folks at home though. So you can see that it's substantially away from the road. Any questions for the petitioner?
Yeah, could you just put on the record, how far would you estimate you are from the road, including the retention pond? I mean, we 50 feet, 100 feet?
It's gotta, I would say from Newport Avenue, it's gotta be 100 feet. And from Ellery, it's from that, where that porch would be, I would say a similar distance. I mean.
That's good enough. That's good enough. I was just trying to get some perspective on the record.
Yeah, we are way back from the road.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Seeing none, I'm going to open up to people from the audience. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak either for or against the petition? Let's give it a couple seconds, just. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Can I have a motion to accept the petition as presented?
Motion to accept the petition?
I'll second the motion.
Motion made and accepted. Seconded, discussion.
I'm going to vote in favor. I think the ask for relief is due to the unique characteristics of the lot. Primarily, the distance off of both roads is significant, where I'm going to vote in favor. I'm going to vote in favor.
This is Tom Heaney. I'm also going to vote in favor of it. And the thing I'm looking at is they're actually, by putting the porch in the location that they're putting it, they're, keeping some privacy for themselves, but they're also doing the same thing for their neighbors. So I think it's correctly cited, even though it requires this variance, it's really correctly cited based on the unique characteristics of this lot.
I'm also, Thomas Silvera, I'm also going to vote in favor, I believe, for the reasons that have been stated.
Jim Miller, I'm also going to support the petition as presented. I think it's the unique characteristics of the lot that make the request necessary. So having that been finished, can I have a roll call?
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Curtin,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Silvera,
Yes.
and Mr. Heaney, yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Petition of 58 Aquidneck Avenue, Limited Liability Company owners and Mission Limited Liability Company applicant by their attorney, Robert M. Silva, Esquire, for a special use permit under section 602 to allow the expansion of the restaurant serving alcoholic beverages. Said real estate is located at 58 Aquidneck Avenue and further identified as lots 1801 and 1802 on Tax Assessor's Plat 116 Northwest.
Mr. Silva, or-
Yes, can you hear me?
we can.
Oh, great. Technology is never been one of my strong suits. I usually like to appear personally in dialogue with the zoning board, but I have to commend the board up to this point, doing a wonderful job under some adverse conditions. And it's just great to get back to work and start moving these applications before the board. The pandemic has made it very difficult for everybody to do things as usual. But in any event, and I digress, for the record, my name is Robert M. Silva. I'm an attorney at 1100 Aquidneck Avenue and a member of the firm of Silva, Thomas, Martland, and Offenberg. And my office is representing Mission LLC, limited liability company that runs a restaurant called Mission Burgers in the site in question down on Aquidneck Avenue. The individuals who are involved with this application have been in the restaurant business for years. Anna Burnley, her husband Tyler Burnley, Chad Hoffa, and Julia Hoffa. They've been very successful restaurateurs. Previously, they ran TSK, Thames Street Kitchen, which was a full service restaurant on Thames Street. And then they expanded by establishing the first Mission Burger facility on Marlborough Street in Newport. And they have now entered into an arrangement where they'll be running the restaurant at the mainstay in Newport. It's going to be known as Nomi Park because it's near Naomi Park area. And finally, they came to Middletown and opened up the second Mission Burger at this location. And this site has been used in the past as a restaurant for a sandwich shop previously. And the Mission people took it over and have been operating Mission Burger at that location. And they came before the zoning board back a while and asked permission to sell liquor on their site. And that was back in April 23rd of 2019. The zoning board was kind enough to unanimously approve the use and the sale of liquor at the facility known as Mission Burger. It was a decision that was recorded in May in 2019. There was also a BVL, limited beer and wine only liquor license issued by the Middletown Town Council. So this group has been operating a restaurant serving liquor and food at that location. To the south of this location, in the same building, there are two condominiums, one condominium being operated and used and leased by Mission LLC. The second one to the south was operated by Empire Tea, which is another restaurant type. But Empire Tea never had a liquor license. The Mission LLC people have negotiated with the owner of the second condominium, 58 Aquidneck Avenue LLC, to acquire the lease to the premises that the Empire Tea Company occupied. So what they will be doing is expanding their service area through the wall, the common wall, to another area, and they would expand Mission LLC to serve food and beverages in the two locations. The matter is pending before the Middletown Town Council on the liquor license request for the expansion of the existing liquor license to include the area now or previously occupied by Empire Tea. And that is scheduled to be heard on the 6th of July. I'm not too sure that the council will not be sitting in a public fashion, and if it won't be, it'll probably hold a meeting as it has held its last few meetings by Zoom. So we're hoping that the board would think in terms of the appropriateness of simply expanding an existing successful restaurant into an area which is essentially just another 875 square feet. I believe we filed a site plan which shows the distance and the measurements that go up to make the dining area, and that would be the area in which the liquor would be served. At the moment, under the executive order from the town administrator, Mission is serving food and alcohol outside of Mission in the parking area, but that will end soon, and there's no intention of expanding that area at all. That's perfectly sufficient for the emergency needs of the restaurant. So with that being said, I would commend the matter to your favorable disposition, allow these people to continue being successful, expand their business. It's a very difficult time to expand businesses, but they're all young, bright, and energetic and willing to take the step forward. And it would be similar use, commercial use in a commercial area, in an area where there are a number of other liquor licenses as well. So you wouldn't be breaking any new ground here at all. I think Mr. Tyler Burnley might have been made part of the hearing, and he might be available to support this or otherwise answer any questions about the operation of the restaurant in the past and as he anticipates it going forward.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Is there anything you want to add, Tyler?
No, you said it all, Mr. Silva. Thank you. Just want to serve alcohol and food in the space that's next door.
Mr. Silva, can you state the gentleman's name again?
Tyler Burnley, Burnley. And the interested parties of the LLC are Tyler Burnley of 245 Oliphant Lane in Middletown. That's his home. And his wife, Anna Burnley, likewise with 245 Oliphant Lane in Middletown, Rhode Island. And their two partners, Chad Hoffer, Hoffer, of 18 Finlay Place in Newport, and Julia Hoffer, who happens to be Anna's sister. They're Jenkinses to begin with. She lives at 18 Finlay Place in Newport as well. And it's two married couples, two sisters, part of that group, who've been involved in the restaurant business pretty much all of their adult lives. And they know how to run restaurants, and I'm sure they'll be very successful and do a good job at this location.
Okay, Mr. Silva, I have a question for Mr. Kane. Mr. Kane, have there been any reports of any problems down there? I know when we did the original petition, there was concern about parking and things like, but has there been anything that you've noted? And no activity with police? Not that I've heard.
I can't answer for the police, but I'm not aware of any issues.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant?
I just wanted to know how many, Thomas Silvera, I just wanted to know how many seats they were adding to the restaurant.
Tyler?
During this time period, I think we're only allowed to have 10 seats in order to achieve the 6 foot or 8 foot distancing, the social distancing. I believe there's 2 4 tops, and then there's a few seats on the drink rail facing Aquidneck Avenue.
You're showing Olin Gambrell here. You're showing 12 on the print, Tyler. 4 on the drink rail and 4 each table, 2 tables.
Okay, yes. Thank you. I'm sorry, I don't have that drawing in front of me.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, there was a restaurant use there before, and the place that they currently occupy, that they're expanding, they're going to be limited to whatever the previous occupancy was because it was a parking variance, if you recall.
I do.
For that property. So their occupancy is going to be limited based on what the parking requirements are.
And the seating in that is all administrative through your department, correct?
Yes.
And that will be accordance with the social distancing.
The social distancing does not apply. This is just about an extension of the existing liquor license. That's another whole issue.
That's the zoning issue, Mr. Gambrell. The social distancing is requirements of the Department of Health, which they also have to comply with.
What's the town council issue? We authorize the expansion by special use, and then the town council authorizes the alcohol to be served in there? Is that?
Correct. The
That's
town
correct. That's correct.
council authorizes the expansion of the liquor license.
But under the zoning ordinance, any restaurant that wants to serve liquor has to come before the zoning board for a special use permit. And that's the first step, and that's what we're doing.
Any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none, I'm going to close. I'm going to see if anyone in the audience would like to speak either for or against the petition. There are nobody out there, so I am going to close the public hearing. Can I have a motion to accept the petition?
Motion to accept the petition.
I'll second.
Motion made and second. Discussion?
I mean, I think we can all agree that this pandemic has crushed restaurants and made it very difficult for a lot of them to stay in business through this. And if for no other reason, when we get a request like this, it seems almost mandatory to me that we try to help them out by approving things like this. Especially if they've been operating a successful business. And you had asked about the violations or problems down there. There doesn't seem to be any. So that's why I'm going to support the application.
It's Thomas Silvera. I'm also going to vote in favor of it. I believe that for the reasons that were stated, and I believe that they sound like a very responsible group to run a business.
Jim Miller, I too am going to support the petition. It's an expansion of an existing use that we've had no problems with, so I too am going to support it. Any other discussion?
One other thing, this is Tom Heaney. I think we've already talked about how difficult it is to run businesses at this time. The fact that they're going to use space already existing in a conforming way that makes good use of the space, but also acknowledges now one business is going to control all those limited spaces. So it's probably an easier job of controlling all those spaces. So for those reasons, I think it's not going to result in any hazardous conditions, and it's also going to be in an aid, if you will, to the area by fully using the building that already exists.
With that, Mr. Heaney, can you ask for a roll call?
Mr. Souza,
Yes.
Mr. Curtin,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Silvera, Mr. Heaney, yes.
And with that, motion carries 5-0. And before I ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting, I would just like to take a moment to publicly thank Celeste, Jack, and all the other members of the building office, because through the very difficult pandemic they've been operating, and building permits have been being issued, and I've talked to contractors that are out working. And I think that's just a tribute to people getting their jobs done. So I want to thank them publicly for doing that. And with that, I'd like to ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make the motion.
Motion made, second.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, adjourned.